Welcome to the Enneagram with Chelsea and Nicoel. This is a positively deviant culture podcast anchored in the Enneagram. Today, we're talking about the type 2 and kicking off with the core brilliance. And before we get too far into it, we have a quick reminder.
Every episode, I want to remind listeners that this isn't a prescriptive, fixed tool, and that our conversations are designed to work with the material and ideas in an exploratory way. And as long as I've been working with the Enneagram, my knowledge and application continues to evolve. And that's really what we're here to do, to keep learning together.
When we think about the core brilliance, we'll just give a high level overview of what that is so that people who haven't listened to previous episodes are exposed to that terminology and why it's so important.
The core brilliances are what I believe are the fundamental missing elements in most of what is written or taught about each enneatype. And these are the parts of us that are not only heroic, but otherworldly, even supernatural. They they're the very elements that are coded into our design and tied to our existential work in the world. And when we're fully integrated and high functioning, each type is profoundly impressive, inspiring, and full of wonder. And that makes the core brilliance an essential piece to seeing each type clearly.
So much of what's out there are packages of behaviors. And we talk a lot about how any type could act in any behavior. And the core brilliance is a way to go to the soul level. Part of why we're doing this is to help people try on different types for fit as well. But what I love about it is that we get to a point where it's like, I want to be that type. And actually, I am this type. So let's get into the core brilliance of the type 2.
So, two's core brilliance is that they exist at the center of grace. They teach the rest of us about grace, which is the ultimate gift because it's something that we cannot earn and we don't deserve. Twos have this powerful position of being lovers of the soul, nurturers of the soul. There's a space in which they teach us about love. And by love, I don't mean just throwing that out there like we typically do in terms of this love. Like, I don't think I believe in unconditional love, but if it exists, twos are the ones that can teach us what that really means. That love is everything. It's not just doing, it's not just feeling, it's not just bringing attention. It's all the things that are incredibly deep and weighty and meaningful that require mutual surrender, that require a certain kind of compassion and an ability to be present to other people's needs and other people's suffering. This is the definite sacred space of twos, is how they are gifted with healing, how they're gifted with an ability to hold your hand in pain. And I think this is a unique quality because most humans have a really tough time being in pain and certainly seeing others in pain. Most people don't really know what to do. It's very awkward or uncomfortable. And twos have this gift of being able to be present in other people's pain and suffering, and gifted with the ability to know what people need in order to heal, in order to recover, in order to be comforted. And this is another element of twos when we say that they're the ultimate nurturers, is that they're able to comfort others in their moments of depletion and suffering. In that space, there's an ability also to anticipate what people need with a really high level of accuracy. So much so that often twos can know what someone needs before this person can even figure it out. Like, there's a absolute ability to be able to understand what is useful, what is helpful, what is needed in this moment. What's interesting is, like, if nines are the most gifted with instinct and fives perhaps the most gifted with insight, I think twos are the most gifted with intuition, which is the intelligence of the heart, a place where humans can be affected by others. And this is the place of the heart, the intelligence of the heart, which intuition, which is we don't even know what that is, right? We don't even know what love is. We don't even know what some of these things are. But twos are right there helping us figure this out. This place of heightened reception to the heart of others is a key factor in this kind of heart intelligence. It's a place where the spirit is affected, for a lack of a better word, like that place of the deepest parts of our soul, which is why I often say twos are the lovers and nurturers of the soul. Like we don't even know what the soul is, but whatever it is, twos are there. And there's this quality of prioritization that when we're, as humans, we're in suffering, when we're in a state of need and we're deprived, that there's an ability that twos have to prioritize humans, to prioritize relationships, to prioritize all of the things that humans need to flourish. And this is deeply selfless in this capacity to prioritize other. That love acts on the other's behalf. Twos learn the languages of love. I think some of us get fixated on one language. It's like, even the love languages, which is something that I'm not sure I entirely buy into, but I noticed that twos around me and the two in me is like, why would you only have one? Why wouldn't you learn all of them? That acts of service and gifts and touch and words of affirmation, all of that should be a way that we love each other, not just one way. And so this is kind of an example and a metaphor of power of twos to learn and give and prioritize humanity. They return us to this experience of grace, that all of these kind of actions of love can't be earned. They're given freely, even when we don't deserve it. And I think this is perhaps the purest gift and absolutely, I think the most essential core brilliance of two.
In this episode, we often talk about not only core brilliance, but how that translates to their existential job in the world. So, what are twos created to bring into the world?
Two's existential job is to heal humanity, to teach us grace, to show us how to prioritize each other and invest in one another and our relationships. This is a big job. I mean, they all are. When you're deeply invested in the flourishing of a soul, I'm not sure that there's a job that's more challenging considering the nature of humanity. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there is. Humans are the most difficult and destructive creatures and have enormous amount of wounds and all kinds of suffering. So how to heal is so fundamental to a human's flourishing, and how to invest in our relationships. I mean, it's a wildly challenging landscape. It's a wildly challenging existential job.
I've heard you in previous conversations use the word salve. And when you talk about this kind of healing of wounds and suffering, salve, I think, is a good way to think about the soothing nature and the comforting and nurturing nature. It's also interesting to me that it wasn't until several minutes in that you mentioned the ability to recognize a need and know what was helpful, because oftentimes this type is referred to as the helper. And you can see how it's a yes and so much more to even understand what's helpful, to understand the needs and the people. And then finally, there's a theme here that I want to call out around relationships. And so that relational capacity and predisposition definitely is sourced from the heart center.
Yes, and I would add that this intelligence of the heart is deeply dismissed in our society and our culture. I find this to be one of the most frustrating and upsetting realities that we have to work with. I mean, all types are misunderstood. We'll get that into a different episode. But I just want to highlight here that the brilliance of twos and the heart centers, which are twos, threes, and fours, is actually the intelligence of the heart, which is an ability to be affected by others, the ability to be penetrable and to be able to absorb the spaciousness of the heart. This is a complicated place, of course. This is worth not being missed, that the intelligence of the heart isn't just our emotions. What it is our ability to be compassionate, which twos teach us how to be. They are the ultimate people who understand and can get to compassion, the most quickly, the most thoroughly. Also, regarding healing, healing is the result of their core brilliance. They happen to be amazing healers because of their abilities to invest in human flourishing and this soulful place. It's their particular skills that add up to being healers. But the more fundamental for twos and their brilliance is their ability to be compassionate, the ability to understand suffering. That is an incredibly powerful, deep place that is so much more primary in what sources their ability to be great healers and to be nurturers.
I think there's another important thing we should call out, and that is when it comes to twos and gender.
This is a really important point, Chelsea, for you to bring up is that the two types that are the most deeply genderized in terms of a type are twos and eights. And twos are seen as kind of the ultimate feminine type because they're nurturers, because they are oriented towards the service of others. But I can tell you that I know many male twos, and they are freaking fantastic and have zero loss of their masculinity. But you're right about this, that it is something that socially gets hijacked in terms of a personality that is seen as being feminine or masculine. And this does a huge disservice to understanding the parts of ourselves, no matter what type we are, since we have all types in us. We are all nine types, and humans absolutely expand both femininity and masculinity. There are no types that are fundamentally masculine or fundamentally feminine. It's how we're interpreting them socially.
You also were talking earlier about compassion. And I remember one time I was a juror on a criminal trial, and that was a really tough place for me because to uphold the law in the way that my type sees the world was a huge leap for me. So there's this level of sensitivity. I cry easily. I wear my heart on my sleeves. Anything you would add on the front of sensitivity and what you see from heart types or the type two in that respect?
Yeah, I think this is something that is consistently a trait of twos is that they can access their emotions pretty easily. Now, there are exceptions to this, of course, depending on the individual that you are. And we'll get to that next, like how integrated or disintegrated you are with the movement, the points of movements, your eight self and your four self, if you're a two. But generally, it is from this heart intelligence that twos are able to access their emotion. And it is a place of vulnerability. It's a place of having a thinner membrane. It's a place of being affected in their heart. And that allows them the particular intelligence that is necessary for their work in the world to be sensitive to the emotional states of others, to be sensitive to the environmental states and how that's affecting other humans, to be sensitive to the relationship dynamics that are also affecting us, all of the things that affect humans' health and affect humans' flourishing. Twos are fundamentally designed to be in touch with. And as a result of that intelligence, they feel very quickly and they're expressive in that way. And that is absolutely from a place of their intelligence, not from a place of weakness. And not all the heart types are the same. I think twos are probably more quickly to express their emotions than fours or threes, for example, who are also heart types. But it's this quality of a two, their particular job in the world, that is the reason why they have an absolute sensitivity in the world. And they are less armored in this way. I mean, we can all armor ourselves up, right? And twos do that. But at a baseline, twos have less layers from which they're able to receive and be receptors of emotional and heart things. And that is the sensitivity that you're noting. And it's absolutely tied to the intelligence of twos, not a weakness.
In terms of strategies, mine tend to be relational. And so, whenever I'd be interviewing for a job or getting started within a workplace or even in a family or friend context, I'm always building relationships. And that is my approach to success. It's with and through other people. And that struck me as interesting in thinking about from a resume perspective. If someone were to understand type two, they would automatically know that this is kind of the course of action.
Yeah, and that's perfectly tied to the core drive and core motivation that we like to give in the core brilliance episode. The core drive for twos is to be lovable. They are driven to earn their lovability. So the core fear is the opposite, which is that they're not lovable. So the core drive is what creates the strategy of each type and how they primarily navigate and their survival strategies, all of the things are tied up in these core drives and core fear places. So for twos, it's the deep desire to be lovable and to earn their lovability. And so what we learn is that twos don't have to earn their lovability. They are already essentially lovable. But that drives our strategy. And for a two, that is essentially what's driving their orientation around others is to provide value to the world and to provide love to the world that increases their lovability.
And so we're going to continue to unpack the type two in our next episode on their movement points. Thanks for listening. To engage or work with us, reach out via the link in our show notes and be sure to click the follow button so you don't miss out on future episodes.